Hello, everyone. It is Friday afternoon, and as usual, or as is the case most of the time, uh, I want to communicate something to you on Friday afternoon. Most of the time, I send a quick recapitulative email, and I'm going to start making these really short little videos for you. In general, the videos will be extremely short. I'll try to keep them to 2 or 3 or at the most 4 minutes. However, for various reasons, this one is going to be a little bit longer. So let me just plunge into it, please. Okay, first of all, the theme that I want to address now has to do with electronic communication. And my basic idea here is, in a way, obvious, in a way not so obvious, and that is that because of electronic communication, business and professional communication have changed enormously over the last roughly 12 or 15 years, I would say. And the way this arc or trajectory is working, the change is occurring, is continuing to occur, and it's more rapid now than it has been in the past. There's 2 or 3 things that are, in a way, quite obvious about electronic communication and professional life. First of all, it makes things very fast. We don't depend on snail mail. Things don't have to go through elaborate circuits to get to people. They click, typing a couple of sentences and clicking the mouse will communicate a message to someone. So that's the first thing. It's very fast. Secondly, and more interestingly for us, at any rate, has to do with the hierarchy. And there was a time until really quite recently that the hierarchy in an organization, wherever it was pretty strict and pretty immobile. Okay, so the classic example would be that if I was a lower middle level manager, getting my tie straight here, if I was a lower middle level manager, roughly whatever, 25, 27, 28, depending, years old, I would probably not have direct contact with anyone other than my supervisor, and occasionally that person's supervisor. Well, although that might be in some places true today, by and large it's not really true anymore. And the classic example that I wanted to share with you is my own example, that I was, let's just say, a middle level manager, sort of at the middle level, when I first arrived back in the States from Germany. And I was pretty new to office type jobs and bureaucratic and organizational type jobs. And I assumed that my whole focus was going to be on my supervisor, who was pretty strict and pretty authoritarian, actually. But about, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 weeks after I had started my job, it was, I even remember when, it was a Saturday evening, about, sort of an odd time, 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, I received an urgent email from someone who would be like, not the CEO, but an executive vice president. Now, I, of course, knew this person by name and by reputation, but I had no interaction with this person whatsoever. I mean, it was someone that was, very, very high up in this organization. I just thought I was kind of one of many. But for one reason or another, this person knew that I was from Europe and I had certain knowledge that most of the people in the United States did not have. And so the executive vice president had 3 questions for me, and they were well, at one level they were hard questions. They were serious questions that he needed to know to conduct his business outside the United States. Remember, we're in the United States. We're in Washington at this time. And I had the feeling that he thought these were going to be very difficult questions for me. They were actually even though they were kind of complicated, they were very easy questions for me because I knew that world better than I knew the United States. So within about, so I had to kind of deliberate when I got these questions, thinking, God, I mean, is this a test? Should I feel honored? Should I feel scared? Should I tell my supervisor? Now, I'm not going to tell you whether or not I informed my supervisor, but I did get those questions answered. I responded to them in, oh God, I mean, it was fast. It was a half hour, 20 minutes. And I basically knocked out 3 one-page memos. And I was thinking, well, I'm probably going to get fired, or I'm going to get in big trouble, or it's just a test and they want to ship me back to wherever, back to where I came from. But the fact of this was that he not only really appreciated it, but he thought it was really cool that I was clearly working, at 8:30 or 9 o'clock, whatever time it was, on Saturday evening. So he gave me he knew my telephone number, of course, because he had the full database. And so he gave me a call, and we ended up talking for 2 hours, okay? And, I mean, he really pumped me. Okay, the point here is that the hierarchies today are much more fluid and flexible. And I guess there's another sort of attached idea here. So it can happen at any time. And so you really want to be on your toes and focus at all time. You also have to sort of, you have to sort of be prepared to go out of your comfort zone in professional correspondence. Now, let me say, not because of that single telephone call and the memos that I wrote, but I was, it was a year later. I got a really serious award, and I got, this considerable amount of money attached to this. And this was set in motion because I was ready to go. Actually, the truth of this is that I was kind of lucky. He happened to ask a question that I knew about. Okay, so there's a third idea here dealing with professional correspondence today and the implications of electronic communication, and that is the possibility for self-expression. Now, once upon a time, professional correspondence was all formulaic, and today, even though certainly there are form letters, and certainly there are specific expressions that you're supposed to use, however, within that context or within that framework, you have a really serious area where you can express yourself pretty fully and pretty carefully. And this is one of the reasons, not the only, but it's one of the reasons why I think writing at work, so to speak, that is professional communication, professional correspondence, today is really interesting. And as we get to know each other better in this course, you'll see how strongly I feel about that. And I also think that being adept at professional communication is in some ways one of the main ways of promotion and success in an organization. Now, we'll come back to that later in the course, but right now, we're sort of still, in a way, getting going. Okay, so that's my first major point. Secondly, I want to sort of say that the challenge, the overarching challenge in all professional communication is achieving a balance between being like a conventional team player where you're following precise guidelines and being proactive. And that takes some practice, and that takes skill, and that takes thinking about the nature of your job, doing a little bit of research about sort of what your company is really like. And so one of the things I will be recommending, as we move forward in the class, is that you always just proactively and on your own and without waiting for, quote unquote order, doing research on your company. This is one of the things that I found out as I was making my way in, my organization in DC, that most of the people in my company didn't know the organization outside of their own office, their own cubicle, their own unit, depending on what it was. And that, I think, was that caused problems for them, and it allowed them to kind of get stopped in their advancement. Okay, I've run out of time. I didn't mean to be so long. Let me think. Yes, I've hit 15 minutes, so I have to stop.